Fridälskade vänner och välkomna till en uppdatering. Här ser vi då Netanyahu rullar in den här trojanska hästen i Libanon. Ja, Israel har ju inte tagit på sig ansvaret för det här faktiskt. Men vad man än gör så får man ju världen emot sig. Men man trycker på mot Libanon och vi ser här hur man har skickat ut varningar att libanesiska civila ska dra sig undan städerna längst till söder, och det här brukar man ju göra strax innan man kommer med marktrupper, så det eskalerar. Och 150 mål har man ju träffat redan nu på morgonen här. Det är ju tydligt att man bereder någonting, och vi får det se nu. Det är ju på väg en massa amerikanska trupper och saker ner till Mellanöstern genom det här hangarfartyget som anländer idag faktiskt. Så att ja, läget eskalerar ordentligt och vi har tagit fram lite klipp för er att titta på här. Vi ber för Israel, vänner. Gud välsigna er. Välkomna ni som har tid på söndag till Parousia mission i Vartagården. Amen. Håll till godo.
Share with you a horrendous joke about the state of the world today. And it is all because of the people running the White House and Washington, the corridors of power in this area and this building. What's the joke? The joke is the United Nations. Wait until you hear the depths that it has fallen, even worse than before. The United Nations General Assembly voted for Israel to pull out all IDF soldiers and civilians out of Judea, Samaria, and Gaza. That's not only the soldiers fighting in Gaza today to defend us, but me and my family and my friends and the close to 1 million Jews who live in Judea and Samaria and Jerusalem. Or in the words of the United Nations resolution itself, it called for Israel to, quote, end without delay its unlawful presence in occupied Palestinian territory within 12 months, including all soldiers and civilians. In essence, the UN General Assembly, which was voted on by a vote of 124 to 14 on Wednesday, September 18th, was a vote to strip Israel of the right to self-defense. We're not allowed to be there, and our enemies can get away with literally genocide against us. It calls on the IDF to withdraw to the pre-1967 armistice lines within 12 months. The resolution also calls on all member states not to sell arms or military equipment to Israel that would be used in Gaza, Judea, or Samaria. What about Hezbollah? What about Hamas, Iran, Qatar, funding terror? Nothing. Never has there been a resolution against Hamas, Iran, Qatar to free our hostages. Never have they voted on resolutions against Iran, Hezbollah, and Lebanon to end the rocket attacks on Israeli sovereign territory that they began launching without provocation after October 7th. No. And the United Nations even has the gall to give Israel a timeline, 12 months. Our captives have been held for close to 12 months. They've done nothing. And they're telling us we have to leave our ancestral homeland? What evil. Don't you think the world should have given a timeline for Hamas, Iran, and Qatar to free our captives in Gaza, if nothing else? We are literally witnessing the world powers exhibit absolute evil. The United Nations vote made no mention of the horrific October 7th massacre of innocent Jews. No blame on Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, or Qatar. No, the resolution is 100% focused on making Israel the bad guy, and we need to be pressured to leave our ancestral homeland, ignoring all the evil that we're up against and the desire to destroy Israel. Total evil. And even worse, guess who one of the sponsors of the vote was? Maybe you guessed it. The non-existent state called Palestine that was recently voted as a permanent member to the United Nations. We are witnessing a total evil at the international level like never before. And guess why the United Nations can get away with this evil? Because the world powers know that the Biden-Harris administration allows them to. That is why President Trump recently said that if Harris wins the elections, that Israel would cease to exist, because he knows the United Nations would be able to get away with allowing our enemies to destroy us. And that is exactly the plan of the world powers, that a future Harris administration would allow to happen, while always saying, oh, but Israel has a right to self-defense. Israel once had a United Nations ambassador named Abba Eban, who clearly called the 1967 armistice lines the Auschwitz borders. If the world would succeed in forcing Israel to expel all 1 million Jews in areas that it deems illegal in Judea and Samaria and the areas of Jerusalem, then it will bring about the destruction of Israel. And Harris, an administration, the Democrats, would allow it to happen. Because all of Israel's enemies will be so empowered to destroy Israel, knowing the international community and the Harris administration would remain silent as they do so. And we don't have, it's already happening. They're silent as they're already trying to destroy Israel, allowing it to happen. So with all this, why am I optimistic? Because the truth is being exposed and because our enemies will fail. Think of it like this. If the world turns on Israel, the whole world will erupt into chaos because the axis of evil in the world will take advantage of the international community's weakness to then destroy all the freedom-loving countries as well. America, you're on the chopping block. Iran, China, Russia, they want to destroy America. So they say there's a green light for Israel. They're going to do it here as well. And when that happens, Israel will do what it has to do to destroy our enemies because all the other countries will be in survival mode as well. Yes, here in America, you're going to be in survival mode, unable to focus on castigating Israel for doing what we need to do to defend ourselves. So we're not going to expel all 1 million Jews, and we're going to remain in Judea and Samaria. Ultimately, we must hold on and strengthen our faith in God above. We keep on standing up for truth. We keep on fighting and doing what we have to do. And God above will do the rest. Pray, pray, pray. These are crazy, insane times where evil is literally being celebrated and encouraged by world powers, including by the Biden-Harris administration and in the halls of Congress. But we will overcome. Am Yisrael Chai. Crazy times. We're going to overcome.
Hur kommer Iran att handla och gå vidare? Det är ju frågan när allt det här vi ser speedar upp mot Libanon, krig och allt möjligt konstigt som händer runt om i världen. Och det märkliga är att arabiska nyhetskanaler faktiskt går emot och hyllar Israels strider emot Hizbollah. Ofattbart, men det rapporterar Amir om. Men Iran har ett kraftigt vapen man kan ta till och det är att stänga Hormuzsundet. Det har man makt att göra precis som houthierna gjorde med Suezkanalen. Och då står vi inför en fruktansvärd katastrof ekonomiskt sett. Vi ska titta på ett klipp som talar om det.
Very well, I believe ultimately, and we're going to work through this video to this conclusion of why this is. I believe ultimately the response from Iran leads to one place, whether that happens immediately or sometime 2 months from now. I don't know when this would be. It would lead to this PR war and a closure of this right here, the Strait of Hormuz. So we've talked about this many times in the past. This is a powerful tool that Iran has at its disposal, leverage over the entire world. Because here we have the Persian Gulf, we have this one choke point by sea through which 21% of the world's oil production flows. 40% of all exported oil on the planet flows through the Strait of Hormuz on a daily basis. Iran has the ability to close this, just as we've seen that their proxy Yemen Houthi rebels have had the ability to close the Red Sea to naval traffic, shipping traffic. And so they could easily shut this down, and I could see an approach similar to what we saw in 1973 with what was called the Arab oil embargo following U.S. support of Israel during the Yom Kippur War. We saw OPEC cut off oil shipments to the United States and other nations that were allied with Israel at the time in response to that war. And what we saw was a quadrupling of oil prices. So I want you to think about what that would mean, the pressure that would put on other nations to tell Israel to stop. You must stop these attacks on Hezbollah so that this strait will open back up again. That's a lot of pressure that could be applied. Again, we saw a quadrupling of oil prices during the Arab oil embargo. If we saw that today, we'd be looking at $280 per barrel oil. Keep in mind, the all-time high oil price in dollars was $147 back in July 2008. That's significant because high oil prices put pressure on economic activity, because all economic activity is directly correlated to energy use. And the higher those energy prices become, the less energy that is used. That means the less economic activity takes place. I don't think it's any coincidence that we saw that all-time high oil price in July 2008. And then what happened in the rest of 2008 and in 2009? We saw just a couple of months later the failure of Lehman Brothers. We saw the Great Recession kick in, the Great Financial Crisis all over the globe shortly thereafter. It was already developing, just like we're already seeing those developing things now in the economy. But we have a very real prospect of this happening. I would put the odds very high that we will see this happen as a result of the conflict. And we'll talk about exactly why that is. But
ja, vi står inför ovanliga kosmiska händelser i både solen, månen, stjärnorna, som precis som Bibeln säger. Nu har kometen Sochin-chan dykt upp precis bakom solen. Och dess utseende får astronomerna att surra av förväntan. Kometen ljusnar snabbt, säger den australiensiska astrofotografen Michael Mattiaso, som har övervakat kometen. Mike Gendron rapporterar att påven Franciscus fortsätter att bevisa att han är den mest inflytelserika och farliga falska profeten i världen just nu. Hans uttalanden i Singapore, ett land där minst 5 olika trosinriktningar finns, har skapat en besynlig och bizarr kontrovers. Denna påve förklarade då alla religioner som en väg till Gud. Sen förskönade han detta påstående genom att säga: det finns bara en Gud och var och en av oss har ett språk för att komma fram till Gud. Vissa är sikher, muslimer, hinduer, kristna. Och det är alla olika vägar till Gud. Vi är alla Guds barn. Denna varg i fårakläder försöker förena alla religiösa människor i världen i en global religion som kommer att dyrka antikrist. Det står om denna världskyrka i Uppenbarelseboken. Läs Uppenbarelseboken 13 så får vi se att jämsides med det politiska systemet så dyker det upp ett falskt religiöst system.